Do you think there's a good balance of genders in policing?
Well, there's a better balance than there was. When I joined policing, there was only 7% women. And then as I went through and when I left policing, it was probably about 27%. And the second half of my career, because we developed what was called the gender agenda, which was around enhancing the roles for women, but also making sure that they had an equal opportunity to actually achieve their potential. The rapidity of the development of women was much faster in the second half of my career to the first, but that's because we did something about it. It could always be better, but I'm really heartened at the moment to see the number of women chief constables that are actually currently being promoted, and the fact that Derbyshire sits, I know, with an all-female chief officer team.
What would you say to a young woman who wanted to get into policing?
So I think that probably a lot of people, and I know in my era, and I talked about the gender agenda just now, the sort of attitudes we had to push against were particularly male views, and also the public view that the police was about brawn. And I can absolutely tell you the police is very little about brawn and very much about brains. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I don't think there's any barriers to men or women who want to achieve in policing. You just have to want to work hard.
Would you say your gender made it harder for you to get where you are today?
It's very hard to know what it would have been like if I'd been a man, because I'm not a man. But I think it's, it is true that it was tougher in that era, because you did sort of have to prove yourself, but you didn't have to prove yourself by being a man. You had to prove yourself by the capabilities I've just talked about, by being able to solve and resolve problems. In those days, there was a heap of respect when I passed my sergeant's exam and inspector's exam, both in the top 200. So you have to be able to not only have the academic, but also you have to be able to do it on the ground, and you have to be there for your colleagues, because ultimately it is a team, particularly in your first couple of years. You're working as part of a team, and together you make a difference. You have to gain respect, and that doesn't actually matter whether you're male or female. But I think perhaps in that era, and maybe even now, people will look at you initially to think, can they actually do it? And once you've proven you can do it, you're in there.
How much has the force, how much has the police force changed over the years?
Well, I think it's changed enormously, but it's changed, but it hasn't changed. You can see it's advanced, but actually at the end of the day, we're still dealing with people, and actually people's issues and problems haven't really changed in the last 50 or 100 years. The context in which they live and the social framework can change slightly, but actually not the actual issues and problems that they have. And it doesn't really matter which era that you've lived in, the policing issues are similar. It's the social context that actually changes.
How long have you been a Lord Lieutenant?
How long have I been a Lord Lieutenant? I've been a Lord Lieutenant literally 4 years on the 5th of April. So I have a few more years yet to go as Lord Lieutenant. I mean, it's a voluntary role, but a very honoured role to actually be able to, very honoured to have the role. But it's also about helping to make a vibrant society, because the royal family want to make a vibrant British society. So my role as her representative in Cambridgeshire is for Cambridgeshire to be a vibrant society, and anything I or my deputy lieutenants can do to support people supporting others to make a difference, so that we all actually have a stake in this fantastic county. That's what I want to do.
What kind of things do you actually do as Lord Lieutenant?
What do I do? My first and foremost responsibility is, if a member of the royal family comes into the county, I have to meet and greet them. But actually that sounds really quite ceremonial, because there is a lot of hard work to be done prior to that in actually arranging the visits, finding the venues for them to visit, working with organisations, could be companies, so they get to see and hear the story. I think a lot of people think royal visits should just be about opening buildings. I can tell you that the last thing the royal family want to do is just to open a building, because a building is quite soulless. What they're really interested in doing is meeting the people and hearing the stories behind what's actually gone on, which, if you think about it, for any of us, just going and cutting a tape on a building, it's not that fantastic, is it? But what you want to do is hear the things that have actually caused it to get to that particular point. So they really are interested in what's going on for people and what's going on in people's lives and how they've actually achieved what they've achieved. Much more than that, because I'm representative of Her Majesty, I also link with the reserves and cadet force in the military. I link with the magistrates, and in fact, Lord Lieutenants for a long time were responsible for the recruitment and the disciplining of magistrates. I have to say, it's we have an oversight role in terms of the of both, but particularly in terms of recruitment, because the whole essence with magistrates is that we want them from all parts of society, and we actually want all ages. So again, we have quite well connected within the county, and hopefully can encourage people to think about becoming a magistrate. In fact, girls, you might want to once you're over 18, because they're looking for all ages. They want people to represent society, so that actually you truly are judged by your peers. And then we link with charities. We promote honours and awards, which is really important. It is important, and so everybody should tell their mums and dads to be looking out for those really significant, capable people that they think they've done a cracking job. They should get an award. And the Lieutenancy is very happy to help people filling in those nominations. We never say no to any request that we get to visit, because there's normally, I have 41 deputy lieutenants, which sounds a lot, but because again, this is voluntary and they cover the whole of the county, and we're a pretty big county, we can normally have a representative of lieutenancy at any event in any area. And you really are getting, when you request, you're getting a representative of Her Majesty, and it's the closest you'll get to having a member of the royal family. And we really are all very interested in things that are going on, and we really do want to support people in their day-to-day activities.
How long have you been chair of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough NHS Foundation Trust?
I've done that role for 7 years, and I became a non-executive director at the Mental Health Trust, because in policing we often work with people who have mental health issues, and they ended up in the criminal justice system when they should never have ended up in the criminal justice system. They should have stayed in the health system. And I wanted to understand a little bit more around mental health and how it was structured. And then I have to say, once I had become a non-executive director, it just grew on me. I thought the work that they did was absolutely amazing. Both, and again, very minimal. We don't have people in hospital wards unless they truly do need to be in there for some intensive treatment. And most of it is working with people out in the community, but also linking very much now mental health and physical health, because again, we're all whole human beings. We, if we have a physical health issue, probably our mental health is affected as well. And we've seen this with COVID, but if you have a heart condition or you have cancer, or, it's not just your physical self, it's your mental self that's actually affected.
Have you ever experienced discrimination in the force?
Yeah, hard to say. I did have somebody when I got a job in London, and he was an inspector. I think we were both inspectors actually, and I was successful and he was unsuccessful, and I met him in the car park and he went, "You only got that because you were a woman." And actually I was able to say, because actually there were 2 successful candidates, and I said, and the other candidate was a man. So it wasn't if you looked at our 2 CVs together, you'd have said that I was definitely head and shoulders above him, but he would never have seen that, because he didn't value, as in policing, they didn't value academic success at that time. And I go back to the physical test, which I actually got lambasted several times for in the Daily Mail, because we were trying to make it a test for health and not a test for physical capability. And that's because the way it was set up, it was a test for women, it wasn't a test for men. And the test that we actually had, it took out the bits that men couldn't do, because actually if you ask a man to do a flexibility test, it's really quite tough and hard. So that got removed, but they kept in the press ups and the pull ups. So you need to make sure that you don't discriminate against people in terms of their capabilities, when actually you're framing the capabilities of the role around a physical capability, which isn't actually necessary for the particular role. Initially, women weren't given truncheons because they thought they might be taken off us and used against us. And then when we did have truncheons, they were unfortunately about that long. They just fitted into your handbag. And they were useless, quite frankly. And I didn't realise that actually I was the first married woman that Avon and Somerset has ever taken, because that was in the era when you're expected to do 5 years and get married. So what on earth length of time would somebody do who was already married when they came in? It took us many years to get given trousers. We used to have freezing nights, but I remember sitting on top of a really high metal gate and a prisoner running away, and I was stranded in an A-line skirt, not being able to move one way or the other. It's so impractical. You are not ready for anything apart from, as I say, making tea and filing.
What would you like to see in the future regarding genders in the workplace?
I want to see that all individuals can actually achieve their potential and what they want to achieve in life. You do need to have a workplace that allows everybody to achieve their potential, and therefore you have to have gender neutral job descriptions and that really just show what the real skills are, no matter where they actually come from or what their actual aspirations, ambitions are. So it isn't about everybody having everything on a plate, because life isn't like that. You actually will have to plot your course, and you might have to move outside your comfort zone or your current organisation to achieve your potential. But actually there should be no bar to you from actually achieving that if the vacancies are there and you have the capabilities to do that particular role.
Did you ever want to quit policing, and if so, why?
I did actually, but it was only lasted, I remember where I was sitting in my garden when I lived in Bristol, and I actually did see an advert in the paper for a marketing director, of which I had very little experience, for Virgin, and I thought actually it'd be quite good to work for Virgin and Richard Branson. I didn't actually ever fill in an application, and that was probably how long it lasted. But that was the one time in my life that I actually did think about it. And then I had an attack of common sense and decided not to.
How well do you think the police are connected with the youth?
And clearly if a young person has done something like graffiti a wall or whatever and has been caught by a police officer, they perhaps won't feel that it's the best connection. But in terms of how you connect with the whole body of youth, that's also quite difficult. I think that since there's been less police on the streets, it's been more difficult to connect. But there are some police officers that are good at connecting and some that aren't. Yeah, I think it is a tough job for the police, because not everybody understands what you're trying to do, and they see you in a certain light. And yeah, I think the more you understand and you talk to somebody, or you know somebody in your family or somebody in your village you can talk to, you have a better understanding about what people do. Otherwise, they're seen as this authority figure. It's a bit like when a police officer, when you see a police car behind you, you suddenly think, oh, just check my speed. And even I do that now, just to make sure that you're not transgressing speed limits.